Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach was released on December 16, 2021 and has been out for almost 4 years. I know, it's hard to believe. Not only is this game known for its complicated and mysterious lore, but it also introduced an entire new generation of fans to the FNAF franchise while also bringing in a new age of FNAF theorists. But 4 years later, what do we know about this game? Has the story evolved with new additions to the timeline? Have we answered every single mystery from this game? Well, in this retrospective video, join me as we go over the history of this game, every single mystery from the base game and from the Ruin DLC, alongside if these mysteries have been answered, while also deciding what mysteries are still left from this game. Which all accumulates to answering one question: have we solved the Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach 4 years later? Well, my name is Bronze Films, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and let's get started. For an overview of the history of Security Breach, it really started with FNAF AR and Help Wanted. Special Delivery introduced us to emails between employees of Fazbear's Entertainment that included someone by the name Ness, and most emails were about a virus infiltrating company computer systems. Of course, we all know how this would pay off later, but most importantly, our first real teaser was at the end of the Help Wanted update. When walking outside this store, instead of following Glitch Shop, you would find the Pizzaplex under construction with a billboard from Fazbear's Entertainment right in front of it that read, "Now hiring." We would then get teaser images that included our first look at the Pizzaplex, the 4 main Glamrock animatronics, and even Vanny. We then got our first teaser trailer September 16, 2020, showcasing the Pizzaplex and the franchise's supposed new villain. We would then get 2 more trailers on January 12, 2021 and in February of 2021, before we'd get our final trailer on October 27th of that same year, revealing the release date and various aspects of gameplay. Finally, on December 16th, Security Breach was released, with its fair share of issues that I'm sure you've seen be discussed by now, but of course, what people were also talking about was the lore. And to give you a history lesson on the lore of Security Breach, here's Neo Nobody.
FNAF Security Breach has a eventful history when it comes to theorizing about its lore. With this game came a brand new generation of FNAF fans, which also was a brand new generation of theorists, along with Matpat seemingly heading the way towards any general fans' basis of the lore. You also had newcomers Mr. Naff, and also Tall, Dark, and Toasty himself. But that aside, Security Breach took a while for the theorists to fully wrap their head around, because you had rooms that looked like this, combined with gameplay that looked like this. But eventually Matpat threw his hat into the ring with the Gregbot theory, the theory that Gregory is a robot version of the Crying Child. This theory, later shortened down to the nickname Gregbot, was very controversial and very memed upon in the community. A lot of people threw away actual evidence towards this theory just for the simple fact of, I don't like this idea, therefore it shouldn't be canon, therefore Matpat's wrong. But over time, people did begin to accept it, and nowadays in the FNAF lore, many new theorists are beginning to build off the framework of Matpat's original theory. But this wasn't game theory's only robotic revelation in Security Breach, as they also claimed that Vanessa could be a young adult robot version of Elizabeth Afton, in the same way that the Silver Eyes had a young adult Charlie Bot, although this theory is overall less well known and less accepted than Gregbot. And to complete the Afton sibling trio, a lot of people quickly agreed that Glamrock Freddy was possessed by Michael Afton. And as if we didn't have yet enough weird Afton possessed souled shit up in here, then let's look down here instead in the Burn Trap ending with William Afton once again being risen from the dead. And he apparently grew an arm. For a while, a lot of people assumed this was the canon ending, probably because it was the only ending to not end with a fucking comic strip. This upsetted a lot of people because it felt like at this point, fan service without any story importance. Why the fuck are we seeing this man get risen back from the dead? Like, we all get that's his thing, but come on, pal, your time's up, buddy. Luckily, later on, with the release of Ruin, we've all since concluded that Princess Quest is the most likely canonical ending, and it seems like we are finally putting Afton to rest and making way for our new main antagonist, the Mimic. Wait, so, Burn Trap isn't William Afton? Is he just the Mimic? Don't worry about it. Nobody really knows. As 2022 continued, Scott released a brand new book series called Tales from the Pizzaplex. This was sort of the spiritual sequel series to Fazbear Frights, with both books seemingly paralleling, or at least giving clues and hints towards the game's lore. Scott has later gone on record to say that this book series was also to sort of course correct after the weird lore mistakes and mishaps that Security Breach brought to the community. And I love how Scott's version of course correction just involves baobab trees and fucking hallucinogenic gas. Scott, it's okay. You already introduced sound illusion discs. You don't need that. You don't. Tales from the Pizzaplex actually did wonders for the FNAF theorists, solving actually very controversial questions at the time, such as who is patient 46. With this new information from the books, it seems like Gregory was also once under the control of Glitchtrap. And just like how he plays Princess Quest to free Vanessa, it seems like somebody must have played Balloon World to free Gregory. And this wasn't the only security breach revelation from the books, because in those same books we were also introduced to the man of the hour, the Mimic. The Mimic was an invention made by Edwin to take care of his son David Murray. At the time, a lot of people, including game theory, just assumed that Edwin was a parallel to Henry Emily's character. John FNAF proceeded to add on to this theory, thinking that maybe the Mimic's code is actually Glitchtrap's identity. And maybe, just maybe, we could trace the Mimic all the way back to this scene in Sister Location. This chip right here, possibly containing the Mimic's code. Everybody thought that these new revelation of theories practically solved Glitchtrap and his role in Security Breach. But everything changed when the Ruin attacked. The original teaser we had for the Ruin DLC showed the Pizzaplex in, well, her ruin, but it also showed off this almost ghostly looking girl, with the artwork's lighting making it seem like she has blonde hair. Everybody immediately assumed this was someone along the lines of like a ghost Susie, or like maybe a robot version of Elizabeth Afton. But in a surprising turn of events, it actually ended up being Cassie, the daughter of Bonnie Bully. And throughout the game, she is lured deeper and deeper into the Pizzaplex by the Mimic. I mean, Gregory, obviously. Can't you tell? It sounds like Gregory. It's Gregory, duh. Only to reveal when she goes down to the deepest depths of the ruined basement that it's just the Mimic all along. And yeah, this was the most obvious twist ever. Did Steelwool purposefully make this so fucking obvious? To escape the Mimic's clutches, Cassie goes up an elevator, only for Gregory to cut it, sending her all the way back down to the Mimic. But considering right once Cassie is going up the elevator, the Mimic is just sort of left standing there right next to the elevator's battery itself, it does seem like this is less likely to actually be Gregory and more or less the Mimic mimicking Gregory, possibly trying to set up Cassie for a future villain arc, making her the new and improved Vanny. We also had little hints towards future games in Ruin, such as Cassie's dad and his role in all of these whole Mimic shenanigans, along with some never before seen costume suits, which we now know were hinting towards Secret of the Mimic. However, seeing the Mimic in the flesh, or the metal, made a lot of people question the canonicity of the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. But in terms of the history of the lore, that's pretty much it. But do these theories still hold up nowadays? Have we actually solved Security Breach? Well, let's ask Bronze Films to find out. Bye bye.
Thank you, Neo, and everyone make sure to check out his channel. So now that you basically know everything about Security Breach, now we can look at a list of mysteries that I think make up the majority of the game and whether or not we can solve them. I know this list can be debated, especially since there's so many smaller mysteries with this game, but to me these are at the core of the game and its story. So I'll do the same when we get to the Ruin portion of this video, a list of 10 different mysteries. So number 1, a mystery that is technically 3, who are these guys? The game centers around Gregory, Glamrock Freddy, and Vanessa or Vanny. This game clearly points importance to each of these characters in different ways, which comes with mysteries like possession, parallels, are they supposed to represent characters from the past, or are they literally the same people we knew of before? All things I'll discuss soon. Number 2 and 3 I'm grouping together. Who is Burntrap and the Blob? They both had major roles in the Burntrap ending and acted as new villains for the franchise that we honestly know nothing about. Each character has its own debate with the community, with Burntrap definitely being the one that fans can't agree on. Number 4, the Sticky Note Room. Now this has been theorized about ever since this game was first released for its odd and almost random nature. Even now it's hard to find a reasonable answer to who or what was down here writing dozens and dozens of messages on sticky notes. This room has heads of Nightmarian staff bots, and whoever was down here even made a staff bot recreation of the Afton family. I know, crazy right? Number 5. Princess Quest. Although these arcade machines seem pretty straightforward in every FNAF installment they're in, the main question lies with the princess herself and her true identity. Number 6. Patients 46 and 71. Although we have a good idea of who they actually are, what's confusing is what we learn about both of them and how it connects to the greater FNAF lore. Number 7. What role does the Afton family play, if there's any? Now you can look at this mystery in a number of ways, like if they're actually alive, are we only seeing parallels to this family, or will they have a role in a future FNAF game? But mainly I want to look at if they're still here and especially where. Number 8. The Nightmare Staff Bots and Plushies. Now this is arguably the most random and confusing part of this game, that we are still looking for an explanation, especially because they have continued to have a role in new FNAF games. So what are they? Are they important, and what does it all mean? Number 9. Sun and Moon. Now this was an entirely new animatronic introduced that the game pointed a lot of importance to, one we would even see reappear in multiple games. We saw a number of connections to other characters in animatronics, but why? Number 10. The endings. There are a total of 6 different endings to be unlocked, some animated while most of them are in a comic book art style. It was heavily debated which ending was canon, and even now it can be up to someone's interpretation. So now that we have our list of 10 mysteries, we can start to go one by one answering which one has been solved, which ones we have a really good idea about but can be debated, and lastly the ones we still know absolutely nothing about being unsolved. Alongside answering if each mystery has been solved, I also want to bring up videos from theorists that can be fundamental to helping our understanding of this game. So starting with the easiest ones that I think we can say have been solved by this point are the endings, Sun and Moon, and the Patience. Now for the longest time it was assumed that the Burn Trap ending was canon because it was the only animated ending and it seemed to be directly connected to the Pizzeria Simulator ending, with William Afton coming back as Burn Trap and the other animatronics returning in the form of the Blob. Then when Ruin was being teased, we saw the Ruin Pizzaplex, suggesting that the events of the ending where the Pizzaplex collapsed on itself during the fire were canon. It was believed that Gregory and Freddy were of course stuck down in the sinkhole because the elevator could only be used once, and some believe that these wires in the teaser belonged to the Blob and that he would be the main antagonist. But then, as Ruin was released, it made it clear which ending was canon in 2 different ways. The first is through comic book drawings Cassie finds that were drawn by Gregory. We find drawings of the 5 different endings, which is the game's way of telling us that these endings are not canon. And one of those drawings was about the Burn Trap ending, specifically this moment as the Blob is about to grab Burn Trap. Then, before you reach the sinkhole, you find the princess's sword through the arcade machine with the image of the glitch out virus right behind it. This seemed to follow the events of the Princess Quest ending, with Gregory completing the arcade machines, freeing Vanessa while escaping with her and Glamrock Freddy's head. Although it still can be argued which ending is canon, especially with some arguing Burn Trap has still had a role as the Mimic and that the Pizzaplex could have only collapsed on itself after the fire. As of now, Ruin seemed to have confirmed through drawings and Easter eggs that the Princess Quest ending is canon, officially solving the first mystery. Now looking at Sun and Moon, like I said, this character seemed to be important, but it was hard to say exactly why. In Ruin, Eclipse even had the same teeth as the Mimic, which made a lot think that he came from the same time period as the Mimic and that they were closely related. So when FNAF Secret of the Mimic was released this past June, it proved exactly that. Here we learn that Edwin Murray, owner of Murray's Costume Manor, a contractor who made Fazbear's Entertainment ideas mechanically possible, was responsible for creating the characters Sun and Moon. There is even a Moon mascot section of the game that has its own mysteries. We even got more lore with Edwin being a parallel to Moon in the Moon.exe minigame. And that is why Fiona represents the sun, with her icon even showing up above F10N4 or M1, which was designed to mimic her. If you even want to break it down by smaller mysteries and security breach, this game even explains why other random animatronics show up, like Monty, Roxy, and DJ Music Man. They were all originally created by Edwin Murray, but were repurposed decades later by Fazbear's Entertainment because they legally got a hold of Edwin's wide catalog, when his company ultimately failed. So although I think more can be said about Sun and Moon and that we'll continue to learn about them, their backstory and meaning alongside existence of other characters has definitely been solved. When looking at the final solved mystery, this one's pretty straightforward but also pretty controversial, the patient CDs. Through CD collectibles, we learn about 2 patients seeing therapists with their sessions being recorded, patients 46 and 71. Patient 71 is clearly Vanessa, as the game explicitly tells us that. We learn about how she is basically being taken over by the glitch trap virus and that multiple therapists are seemingly disappearing. With patient 46, their identity is hidden, but we do have certain facts to help us identify who they are. We know they have hacking abilities, are most likely a child, and have a close connection to the Pizzaplex. And of course, the person who comes into your mind may be Gregory. Now there are other theories to who this could be that include but are not limited to Charlie, Elizabeth, and even the Crying Child. Oh, and most of these theories revolve around robot children, which is something I'll mention later. But then, with the tales from the Pizzaplex novels, we learn about GGY, who has the same hacking skills and is closely connected to the Pizzaplex, who is probably but most definitely Gregory. This seems to point us back to Patient 46, the exact same traits, and the novels just give us more context to this character who can be seen as the antagonist. Now before you go commenting that the books aren't canon, don't worry, I know, and it's something I strongly believe in, but I still think we can use them as supporting evidence to back up claims, especially when these books have strong connections to characters from the games and it takes place in the exact same setting as Security Breach, but again, not canon. So we know who both patients are, and whenever we have theories about Vanessa or Gregory, the consensus is that the CDs can be used as evidence to learn more about their characters. And now we can look at the next set of mysteries that I'm going to label kinda solved, as a lot can be debated within them. Starting with my favorites, who are Burntrap and the Blob? Now these are mysteries I made a ton of videos on, and you've most likely seen them being discussed by amazing theorists. With Burntrap, the main argument is whether he is William Afton coming back once more, or if he is the Mimic mimicking William Afton while wearing a corpse and springlock suit. The evidence towards him being William are pretty straightforward. Burntrap shares a similar design to all of William's appearances, and a decaying corpse within a spring bunny suit. You can see his flesh like Springtrap or Scraptrap. Burntrap has purple eyes with purple smoke coming out of his charging station that is presumably keeping him alive. Burntrap is found in the sinkhole in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, which is of course the same location where Pizzeria Simulator took place, where William was burned and supposedly killed. This also means that Glitchtrap is William as well, with his agony or spirit possessing a circuit board, where he would infect the Help Wanted game and Vanessa. Vanny would then bring him physically back as Burntrap. With the argument of him being the Mimic, most of it lies with the novels, Ruin, and even with Secret of the Mimic. The Mimic shares physical features with Burntrap. When looking at their legs, they both don't match, both their left feet only have 3 toes, both of their left arms have 5 fingers, and they both have a similar pose with their left arm is raised but their wrists are flat. In the books, we learn that the Mimic wears a mascot suit with a person already inside of it, causing the person's flesh to fuse with the Mimic, and for the mascot suit left over on the endoskeleton. When you picture it, this is exactly how Burntrap would look. The flesh is from the person and the suit would have come from the mascot the person was wearing. In Ruin, it would also explain why Burntrap is notably missing, as we know the Mimic was designed to mimic others. And a video I want to highlight by underscore how Ruin secretly solved the Burntrap debate, which I'm sure you've all seen by now, and if you haven't, please do, because it's honestly just amazing. But it highlights how a claw mark that is found in the vent next to Burntrap's room is also found in the vent leading to the Mimic's lair. This claw mark also perfectly lines up with Burntrap's hand, suggesting it's the same hand as the Mimic and that he was the one who left it here in both locations. We even find a similar purple glow effect in the Mimic's room, just like we do when Burntrap is revealed. So after Security Breach, Burntrap would crawl through this vent, would lose his corpse and springlock suit, and would then be trapped in this room by Vanessa and Gregory, where he would leave another claw mark, again making these two the same. So when looking at all the evidence, it can truthfully go either way, and I'm sure many of you watching this video are still split on the topic. It's just one of those things that still hasn't been answered, and I don't think it will unless we get new information with a new FNAF game. But we do have solid evidence for both sides that doesn't leave this mystery completely unsolved. Now with the Blob, there's much more possibilities than just 2 sides. Some of the most popular theories include that it's Molten Freddy from FNAF Pizzeria Simulator fused with scraps from the Pizzeria and Pizzaplex, creating a new amalgamation animatronic. But the issue here is that Molten Freddy was burned in that fire, and that parts like the Funtime animatronic shouldn't technically exist, since by this point in the timeline they were already together as Molten Freddy, and parts from Circus Baby should have been Scrap Baby. Another popular one from Game Theory that was released only months after the game was released is that the Blob is made up of animatronic parts from Rockstar Row, and the agony from the Pizzaplex is fueling it, which is why the puppet is missing her tears and why we see Funtime animatronics when they should be parts from Molten Freddy. Other theories are that it's made up from agony from murdered employees in the Pizzaplex, or that it's even an entirely new antagonist. More recently, theorists like TDreads have connected the mystery to Secret of the Mimic into the Storyteller tree, suggesting that the Blob is the game's version of Storyteller, or that the Blob is actually F10 and 4 engulfed in wires that are actually controlling and are all over the Pizzaplex, acting as a power source or a hub for the Mimic AI. The animatronic parts could be explained by the FNAF 3 map found in the prototype Pizzeria, as this prototype location would be where the Blob is currently residing in. So if this map was here to tell us that we were near this prototype location, the Blob could have easily gone there and gotten masks of different animatronics. Personally, I suggested that the Blob was made up of the souls of the 7 technicians from Secret of the Mimic who failed to retrieve the Mimic schematics and were killed by him. The 7 souls would line up with the 7 animatronics making up the Blob. But like with Burntrap, it's just one of those things where we have no concrete information and it could honestly go either way. Even in Ruin, when the Blob showed up again, it was only for a slight second and it didn't tell us anything about the character itself. But but because we have some ideas, Burntrap and the Blob are kinda solved. Now, the Nightmare Staff Bots is a mystery I'm sure you've also seen be discussed by now, a strange recurrence of a character that wasn't even supposed to be canon. We saw him in a Help Wanted level, officially making him canon to the universe, also meaning Fazbear's Entertainment knew of his existence. We would continue to see Nightmarian and Security Breach through the Nightmare Staff Bots with the message, "In your dreams." This was accompanied by Nightmare plushies hidden around the Pizzaplex almost as if they were watching us, and we would continue to see them in ruin, but why? Well, now most of the theories revolve around the Mimic, and more specifically how they could be representing each other. An amazing video I want to highlight, which is actually a new one, FNAF The Ultimate Nightmarian Theory by FuhNaff. Here he goes over how Help Wanted was being mimicked into the Pizzaplex by the Mimic program, which includes the Nightmarian staff bots as it would have been mimicked from Nightmarian from one of the minigames. He brings up a lot of great connections to the Silver Eye book trilogy into the games through parallels, and he suggests that Nightmarian represents the Mimic itself. Through scrap content and Secret of the Mimic, we learned how all of the mascot jump scares was supposed to include a Nightmarian's jump scare sound effect, not just Jackie. He also brings up how the placement of Nightmarian staff bot heads in the sticky note room would represent the physical Mimic, and that the server room filled with puppet-inspired wires would represent the virtual Mimic virus. So I think it's clear that Nightmarian is connected to the Mimic and to the Mimic's origins, but it's still something where the meaning can be seen as vague and we still don't have all the pieces to this mystery. But for the last kinda solved mystery, what's up with the Aftons in the Pizzaplex? Like I said earlier, you can tackle this mystery in a number of ways, with the first simply being parallels. Burntrap or the Mimic represents William, Glamrock Freddy represents Michael, Gregory represents the Crying Child, and Elizabeth represents Vanessa. Or you could take this literally, with William coming back again, Michael possessing Glamrock Freddy after the FNAF 6 fire.
I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path.
The Crying Child would return as Gregory in a sort of robot child situation, which I'll come back to later. And Vanessa would also either be a robot or it's actually Elizabeth returning in some way. Or it's a mix, where some return and some don't, where people like Michael Afton could still be alive working for the new Fazbear's Entertainment, while Vanessa's actually a new Afton we never heard of until now. Each possibility has its own set of evidence, with the two people who come to mind who really explore the possibilities being Game Theory and ID's Fantasy. Of course, Game Theory brought up Miss Afton in a role in trying to bring back the Afton family, while ID's Fantasy had a couple theories on different members. And even most recently, she revisited Glamrock Freddy and Michael in this video. But one of the main issues is that with each new addition to the franchise, it seems to stray away from the Afton family. Ruin introduced the Mimic, which kinda eliminated William from the picture. Help Wanted to continue to dive into Glitchtrap, where at this point the consensus is that he is the Mimic. And of course we got Secret of the Mimic, a whole game dedicated to the Mimic and a new family, the Murrays. But at the same time, the Aftons are still very much present. In Secret of the Mimic, we got emails from WA or William. We basically got confirmation that Edwin's mansion later becomes William's home, as David's room is almost an exact copy to the Crying Child's room. And it seems that Michael might have a role in the next FNAF game, which might have Abyss in its title. I made a whole video going over the teasers leading up to this game and a new hour-long ambience video released by Stewwool. During this video, slightly altered tracks from Sister Location played, which included Demolition Inevitable, Michael's infamous theme. This could suggest that Sister Location and Michael will have some role, with fans theorizing that Cassie survived the elevator fall at the end of Ruin and that the elevator fell into the Sister Location bunker, where Cassie will have to navigate her way through Circus Baby's entertainment and rental just like Michael did. And if he is really alive, he could show up and help her out, as in Ruin, Gregory does mention some mysterious friend before their name is cut off.
My friend has access to the building maps. Just follow the instructions.
But now I'm just rambling, and it could just be as possible that he died in the FNAF 6 fire. So this just leads us right back to the beginning. Yes, it's clear the Aftons have had some role in Security Breach, but this could mean anything. Which leaves us with dozens of theories surrounding this family's fate. And now looking at mysteries that I would consider unsolved, let's start with the Princess. The Princess Quest arcade machines have had a role ever since Help Wanted and have continued to have a role all the way until Help Wanted 2. It's clear Princess Quest was one of the ways to defeat the Glitchtrap virus and to more specifically free whoever was under his control, where in this case it was Vanessa, but the actual identity of the princess has remained a mystery. This really cool video by Rightos, who needs no introduction, explains the possibility of the princess being Cassidy or Golden Freddy. Originally, the game's files included the name Cassidy for the princess sprite, which immediately made people say that the princess was Cassidy. Rightos also draws connections to Cassidy possibly being represented in the Tales from the Pizzaplex novels as a parallel to the story Drowning. And the fact that Golden Freddy is in every single game where William is made it weird that they wouldn't appear in Security Breach, where William clearly is. Other theories suggest that the princess could be anyone from Vanessa, Charlie Emily, and Cassie from Ruin. Although we have theories on who the character is, the story seems to focus on the arcade machines themselves and how they're connected to Glitchtrap or Vanessa. So no clear intention to explore this character further leaves this mystery unsolved. Now looking at the sticky note room, which like many theories is still being debated to this day. Probably the more confusing part of this game, the simple question is who was in this room? A great example of a theory that really acted as a sort of pillar to other theories is game theory's FNAF, the clue that almost solved everything. This video builds off his Gregbot theory, which don't worry we're about to cover, where Gregory is the crying child reborn as a robot. As the sticky notes tell us his story about the crying child coming into consciousness and remembering his past, like his birthday party or the bite, which is why we see the Afton family staff bots as it's him trying to recreate the family he lost. Most theories from here honestly are about robot children or the idea of something gaining consciousness. A lot of new theories suggest that it's actually the Mimic, and the sticky notes are about his past with the Murray family or him trying to mimic the Afton's lives. Even more now when we have the Mimic mimicking David as a child, which lines up with the childish drawings and notes in the room. But we still don't have concrete evidence to who this is or what this room really represents, and I don't really ever think we'll get a concrete answer. Finally looking at what I call the big three, who are Gregory, Glamrock Freddy, and Vanessa. Cause yes, this mystery is different from the Aftons. I briefly talked about Vanessa being Elizabeth Afton, a new Afton, or an entirely new character. The similarities between Elizabeth and Vanessa can't be a coincidence, and it could be the reason Glitchtrap chose to take over her life. We learn a lot about her character through the CDs, but still her identity remains a mystery. She clearly knows more about the Pizzaplex and Fazbear's than we've realized, because her, alongside Gregory, trapped the Mimic in this room and must have known about him previously and just how dangerous he really is. She might also know more about Mexis, as she either reactivated this machine to keep the Mimic trapped, or as some believe, she's the one who moved it here. She also has a connection to the Princess Quest minigames, which can be interpreted in a dozen of ways. It would be weird for Steelwood to introduce a character that clearly has narrative and visual similarities to past games and characters, only for them to actually be someone entirely new. But even then, without a clear idea for the community to theorize and build off of, her character has remained as someone we know is important, but unclear to where the franchise is going to take her and why. Now, Glamrock Freddy is a character with even more possibilities to who they are, and I think it's the one the community can't really agree on. A few ideas include possession by Michael Afton, Henry Emily, Charlie Emily, or even the crying child, which is an idea I honestly lean towards. Michael and Henry were both down in the FNAF 6 fire, and either of their souls could have wandered off into Freddy. While with the crying child and Charlie, it can be argued that their personalities are very similar to Freddy. Charlie would act as a protector as the puppet to the other souls, just like Freddy acts as a protector to Gregory, stopping him from being a victim to Vanny like the many others. On the other hand, it can be seen that Freddy is scared just like the crying child is in FNAF 4. He's almost scared of Vanessa the same way the crying child was of the animatronics and with his older brother Michael. He is also missing his head in Ruin, which could be a parallel to CC losing his head in the bite. Ruined Freddy also resembles Nightmare Fredbear, which is another way CC is represented. But if none of these souls are possessing Freddy, it could simply be that his AI is different from the others. In Help Wanted 2, we learn that the Glamrock Endos were trained in the same room where Glamrock Freddy was trained and essentially raised. So maybe here his AI was trained with the information of any of the actions or with different tragedies from the past. Which is why his personality seems similar to characters we've known of before. There are also newer theories on Glamrock Freddy like this one by Minibyte Games connecting Freddy to F10 and 4. However, these are still just theories and the games don't seem to lean towards any definitive conclusion. But it does seem that Glamrock Freddy will return and maybe we'll finally get an answer to his identity. Finally, let's look at Gregory, where this single image from game theory revolutionized theorizing and ideas about this franchise. I'd say the biggest theory around Gregory is of course him being a robot child and actually being the crying child, an idea brought up in Game Theory's video, FNAF Don't Trust Gregory. Matpat brings up points how Gregory doesn't have a guest profile and how he's most likely living in the Pizzaplex, how he stutters when Freddy asks his name, his physical appearance that resembles Crying Child, Freddy's comment on how Gregory is broken, instances in the books where children are rebuilt into robots, and how Gregory's vision almost glitches out when Vanny gets near him, since her presence would be disrupting the feed of his robot eyes. This idea has even been further explored in a new theory by TDreads, which I'm sure you've all heard about by now, where TDreads proposes that David Murray from Secret of the Mimic, Gregory from Security Breach, and the crying child from FNAF 4 are all literally and narratively connected. He highlights connections between David Murray and Gregory, like how both are seen sitting on the same hill at the future Pizzaplex land, connections between David Murray and the crying child, like how they both have neglectful parents and have the same house and toys. This all leads to the idea that William Afton is trying to recreate David into the crying child, attempting to copy Edwin Murray's invention. Of course, I recommend checking out the full, almost hour-long video to get the full context. So based on these theories, I would actually label Gregory as being kinda solved, but as a whole, being connected to the other two major characters from Security Breach, finding an answer for all of them seems somewhat impossible, or at least not yet. That leaves us with 3 mysteries solved, 4 mysteries kinda solved, and 3 more mysteries unsolved, and we haven't even gotten to Ruin yet. Now, I did talk about the Ruin DLC a lot, but this is definitely its own project with its own set of mysteries that we need to dissect. So, to give you a brief history on Ruin, let me introduce a good friend, unnamed security guard.
Hey everybody! I'm Unnamed Security Guard, a new FNAF theorist and former security guard, and Bronze has asked me if I would be willing to do the ruins section of this video, and as you can see, I am more than happy to. So, without any more ado, let's get right into it. So, to give the briefest of overviews, Ruin opens with a girl named Cassie as she jumps down into the ruins, of the Pizzaplex. She pauses to call out for Gregory, saying she got his message, but after getting no response, she continues down into the main lobby next to Rockstar Row and deeper into the Pizzaplex. As she is walking in, she hears a static noise in the distance by the elevators and starts to go towards it. When she gets there, she finds a Roxy talkie with Gregory on the other end, saying he is trapped in a sinkhole under Roxy Raceway and she needs to come find him. As she continues, she finds a Fazwatch, much like her dad's, and uses it to open doors and deactivate the security nodes of the Mexis system after being told by Gregory that for him to escape, all of the security nodes need to be deactivated throughout the ruined Pizzaplex. Near the end of the DLC, she makes her way into the sinkhole and under the ruins of the FNAF 6 pizzeria where, after completely deactivating Mexis and breaking through a concrete wall with a forklift, she climbs through, and the game reveals the voice throughout the DLC wasn't Gregory at all, but a new character called the Mimic, who moves to attack Cassie before Roxy pushes the Mimic away, buying time for Cassie to run away. This is where the game branches off into its 3 different endings. One of the endings, which appears to be the canon ending, is the main ending you get by successfully escaping the Mimic and making it to the elevator. After barely escaping the Mimic, the real Gregory explains how she was never supposed to go down there, how the thing in the sinkhole tricked her, and has been trapped down there, quote, a really long time. After saying how it isn't her fault the Mimic is free now, and knows she did it for him, before saying, quote, we can't risk being followed, he apologizes, before the elevator falls in a complete freefall a moment later. After a long moment of silence, we hear Roxy say, Cassie, before the game ends. In what has been dubbed the Brazil ending, if you ignore Gregory's directions and take the wrong path during the Mimic chase at a particular junction, you will find a dead end with a Freddy cutout holding ice cream. If you put on the mask at the cutout before the Mimic gets to you, you see an image of Vanessa, Gregory, and Helpy on a hill enjoying ice cream as music plays. Gregory says it's okay, and he found a spot to hide as a distorted voice of Gregory can be heard overlapping, and as Cassie's breathing becomes more and more panicked. It ends with a distorted voice of Gregory saying, keep going. The final and secret ending has been dubbed the Scooper ending. To get this ending, you need to find secret cameras at chapters 1, 3, 5, and 7, and look through them until a secret door opens in the video feed. When all 4 secret doors have been opened, you continue playing the game normally until the Mimic chase at the end. When you get to the final hallway that the elevator is at the end of, to the left will be a new path that is opened, and at the end of this new path, you will find a room with a button that activates a scooper that is in the main room that grabs the Mimic as it begins banging on the door. It pulls the Mimic into the smoke, and once it clears, the Mimic is laying on the ground, seemingly deactivated, and the game ends. So, that pretty much covers Ruin, so thank you guys for watching, and thank you Bronze for having me on.
Thank you so much, Unnamed Security Guard, and everyone please make sure to go check out his channel. So now we can look at the list of ruined mysteries, which is a lot shorter, and go through the exact same process where most of these theories are going to revolve around the Mimic. Number 1 is the Mimic Glitch Trap. Now at this point you would imagine that Glitch Trap would finally be solved and that the answer would be revealed through the Mimic. Although there are connections, I want to look at all the possibilities and how it ultimately does matter to solving parts of Security Breach. Number 2 are the books canon. Now I think this is 100% the most controversial topic with the modern FNAF lore, and it's one that's been developing as the books and games have been released together. Are the books in a different continuity? Are they parallels or are they canon? I think the answer is clear now, so when I get there, please be nice in the comments. Number 3, which ending is canon? Like Security Breach, there's a couple of endings with each of them having some argument to being the canon one. Although we don't have the next game in the timeline to tell us which one was canon like Ruin did with Security Breach, I think we already got an answer. Number 4, what is this thing? Of course you may see the scooper and think immediately of the scooper from FNAF's sister location, making these two the same and these two areas the same. Or it could honestly be something entirely new created by Fazbear's Entertainment, so we'll find out soon. Number 5, what is Mexis? Another part of Ruin that really confused the FNAF community was this simple supercomputer. Is it possessed by someone we used to know, or is it just a new character? Obviously this is someone important and we might just be one step closer to solving who this is. So actually starting with the opposite from the Security Breach list, what mysteries are unsolved? Well, in my opinion, simply none of them, because Ruin was a continuation, because we now have 2 projects released after it, and most importantly, because Scott Cawthon and Stu will work together on this game making one coherent story, something I'll discuss later. We now have a really good idea of what Ruin was supposed to tell us, leaving only solved and kinda solved mysteries, starting with our first solved mystery, which ending is canon. To find an answer, we need to look at teasers that we've gotten over the past few weeks to what looks like to be Ruin 2. One of the main composers responsible for the incredible FNAF music, Leon Riskin, posted this teaser for an upcoming project named Forgotten Names and Faces, with the tags reading, "Who will catch you when you fall into the abyss?" This included brand new music, so take a listen. If it sounded familiar, that's because it has the same melody from Gracefully Into the Abyss from FNAF Help Wanted 2. It appears that this new project is an upcoming FNAF game in the franchise. The acronym for Forgotten Names and Faces spells out FNAF, and both songs seem to be centered around Princess Quest with the word Abyss in both of them. This has led many to title this new game FNAF Abyss or FNAF Into the Abyss. He also posted a song titled Fixing Elevators with the caption, "Elevators can't be trusted, take the stairs." The hashtags in the post also spell out Betty Lou Oliver, a person who holds the world record for surviving the longest elevator fall. All of this just screams Cassie and her fate at the end of the Ruin DLC. She tries to take the elevator to escape the Mimic, but either the Mimic or Gregory cuts the elevator, making her fall to her supposed death. But with these teasers, it suggests that she actually survived and that the next game will be FNAF Ruin 2, meaning Cassie is still down in the sinkhole alone with the Mimic and that the elevator ending is the canon one. Sure, this could change as we get more information and teasers, but so far it's heavily suggested that the bad ending is canon, meaning the sad ending where Cassie wears the Vanny mask in front of the Fredbear cardboard cutout revealing Helpy, Vanessa, and Gregory happily on the hillside, alongside the Scooper ending where the Mimic is scooped out of the lion costume, are not canon. The next solved mystery is the book's canonicity. Again, I can't reiterate how insane it was being in the community at the peak of this argument. You had both sides willing to put everything on the line to prove that the books were or weren't canon, specifically the tales from the Pizzaplex novels. There are a total of 8 different novels with tons of stories that have helped us to piece together the timeline, like with Didophobia that finally told us more about FNAF 4 and Sister Location. And of course other stories like GGY really made some consider the possibility of the books being in the same continuity as the games, as Gregory would be GGY. We were seeing more and more connections between the two, with what really made the topic so controversial being the Mimic's appearance in Ruin. This was of course a major antagonist in the books, so finally seeing them in the games made it seem like this argument was over. But of course you could have said that this was just a parallel, and this was even something I believed in. But then with the FNAF Help Wanted 2 update released in December of last year, it really seemed over for the book deniers, as not only did we see the Mimic, but we saw the Tiger Rock plushie for the first time in the games. This tiger plushie belonged to David Murray from the books, as the Mimic would even get a plushie of his own. Up to this point we only knew of the plushie and the Tiger Rock animatronics from the books, but now this was a major character that existed inside of the games, confirming the Mimic's backstory and that he wasn't just a parallel. I even made a video about this update saying that we can no longer deny the book's canonicity. In the update we even saw what seemed to be Edwin Murray's company and the factory from the books. So the final nail in the coffin was Edwin Murray himself being mentioned in the Secret of the Mimic trailer released in February of this year. At this point, it was undeniable that the Mimic and Edwin were canon characters and not just parallels to characters like Henry. And as we'd get more teasers or images for this game, a large part of the community could finally agree that the books, or at least part of the books, were canon. So finally, this debate was put to a rest.
It is lonely down here.
Wait, what? What are you, a computer?
Okay, you know what, never mind, I am doing a 180 on what I just said. The books are definitely not canon whatsoever, right? Although the main points from the books did transfer over to the games, like the Murray's and the Mimic's backstory, what didn't were the specifics of the story and how it impacted this game alongside the rest of the lore. There are a couple of things that were just different, but a perfect example is Fiona, wife of Edwin Murray and co-owner of Murray's Costume Manor. In the book, she dies giving birth to David and doesn't have a role in his life. But here Fiona was very much alive for the first couple of years in his life, and it's implied she died at a Fall Fest fire. And her absence in David's life is why Edwin created the Mimic and M1, a program designed to mimic Fiona. M1 is then transferred into the supercomputer F10N4, which may or may not be Mex's, something we'll discuss soon. And even now it's theorized that F10N4 still has a role in the modern lore as I discussed earlier. So honestly, this detail alone should be enough to say that the books in their entirety are not canon to the games. Sure, you could argue that parts of the books are canon, but with how Secret of the Mimic structured the Murray family, which did differ from the books, I do think it's safe to say that the books are not canon, solving this mystery. Now looking at the first kinda solved mystery, what is Mexis? Mexis first appeared as a secondary antagonist to Ruin. Whenever you'd wear the Vanny mask for too long, he would appear and send an animatronic after you. We learned that Mexis was designed to keep the Mimic contained, so when Cassie deactivates the computer, the Mimic is free and you know the rest. We then saw him in the back of this van in the Help Wanted 2 update, as inputting the code 4625 Mexis would come out of the computer before the van would speed off. And most recently in Secret of the Mimic, we kinda saw Mexis again. Like I mentioned, we were introduced to this supercomputer in the FNAF 1 prototype pizzeria. Design-wise, it may lead you to believe that this is Mexis. But of course we know this is F10N4. If anything, this game suggests that there are two supercomputers, F10N4 and Mexis, which we know stands for Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage Number 1, or also known as the Cradle program. That's right, Mexis is the first supercomputer, while Fiona was most likely the second computer made. Based on this information and the text logs, we can assume that Edwin designed these computers to store the different Mimic programs. After David's death, Edwin would move M1 into the F10N4 computer, and after M2 would become violent, the plan would be to move the program into Mexis or use it to contain him like it does in Ruin. The only issue here is that Mexis was the first computer, so why would Edwin move M1 into the second computer and not Mexis? Unless he had Mexis as a first backup computer in case M2 went rogue, but this seems unlikely. It could also just be possible that these are somehow the exact same computer, meaning M1 is Mexis. But this also seems unlikely, and the game suggests that there are actually two separate systems. So although we know Mexis is a separate computer than F10N4 and that it was created by Edwin, this still doesn't explain the Blue Rabbit character we face in Ruin. This is where the theories can honestly go either way, with it simply being an AI, someone's consciousness, or being possessed by a character. If it is possession, this could be anyone from William Afton because it matches the style of his characters, Henry Emily continuing to fix the mistakes of his past, as here it can be argued he had a role in Edwin's downfall which led to the evil Mimic. It could be Edwin trying to stop the Mimic, or really anyone else trying to keep him contained. I do think Secret of the Mimic finally gave us some backstory and context to this character, especially with it being an older computer from the 70s. But with the character itself, we still don't know anything about it. I do think it will have some role in the next FNAF game, as it seems like it's the only thing that can really keep the Mimic contained. So maybe Cassie and other characters will venture back to Mexis to reactivate it, and in that moment we'll find out who they really are. Something else I just want to throw out there, because I think it is a really cool detail, is the explanation to the Help Wanted 2 update where Mexis is taken away in this van, since it really didn't lead to anything. Well, when I was live a few months ago, one of the viewers gave a perfect explanation. Mr. 3D Gaming proposed the idea that this ending was representing Mexis in the form of the blueprint being in the data driver and it being taken away from the manor by Arnold. Arnold does escape with the Cradle blueprints in the parachute ending, and it's a thing that the Mimic takes back after stopping him from escaping. So instead of looking at this as something that literally happened, we can instead look at it in a metaphorical sense, where it was showing us the Secret of the Mimic ending, where Arnold attempts to escape with the Mexis blueprints, which is why we even see the van drive off in such a hurry, just like we did in the actual ending. But with more questions than answers, Mexis stays as kinda solved. Now looking at Glitchtrap, who is just as controversial as someone like Burntrap, who is this? Now I won't really argue about him being William, since most of the evidence is the same as him being Burntrap, with William soul possessing a circuit board, being uploaded into Help Wanted, and then becoming Glitchtrap. Although this could be possible, I instead want to focus on him being the Mimic, which is a wide consensus among the community, and more specifically which version. With Secret of the Mimic, it introduced the possibility of Glitchtrap being M1, M2, or even M3, as some theorize it's a new Mimic program. One of the main differences with Glitch Trap that separates this design from the rest of William's appearances is the fact that this is a mascot suit and not a springlock suit. A difference that theorists like FuhNaff pointed out for the mascots having a much more important role than we realized and have continued to, and now of course we know that he was right with Secret of the Mimic, where mascots played a huge role like with Tiger Rock and Party Time Chica. So this fact alone convinces many, including myself, to say that Glitch Trap is the Mimic, and I was even surprised that we never saw the mascot suit itself in Secret of the Mimic. It could have been anywhere in the manor, and it does make a lot of sense as this would be something made by Edwin Murray. But again, now it just lies on deciding which program it is. If it is M1 or F10 and 4, this would mean that the program designed to mimic Fiona was uploaded into the Help Wanted game. So why would Fiona decide to now mimic William Afton and his actions? Well, this could be that it's mimicking the information of the game and of Fazbear's Entertainment. The mimic program acts on the data it receives, so here it's taking in all the information of the game and of Fazbear's like the MCI, causing M1 to recreate it in one of the endings. So the mimic is simply using Afton's personality and face as like a tool. But with M2, it would be a scenario where the endoskeleton itself and a separate copy of its program exist at the same time and are working together. It can be argued that with the physical mimic being trapped, the virtual mimic is helping to get him out. M2 would be uploaded into Help Wanted, would represent himself as William and as Nightmarian, which I discussed earlier, and then he would take over Vanessa so she could help him with freeing the physical mimic. Now whether this be through Burn Trap or just releasing the mimic to be free in the Pizzaplex, Glitch Trap and the mimic are working together. It can also be argued that Glitch Trap represented himself as Helpy in Ruin and in Help Wanted too, as in this ending we see the player keep the Glitch Trap virus alive as we see him exiting this charging station. Helpy would have been using the player to complete tasks to collect these Fast Force toys, which is how Glitch Trap emerged from the charging station. But at the same time, in the other ending, which fans both regard as canon, we see Glitch Trap being destroyed by Vanny, freeing herself. So by the time Ruin happens in the timeline, Glitch Trap is most likely already destroyed, leaving just the physical M2 mimic. The last option is that it's a new program that can be known as M3. When M1 or M2 are being uploaded into the Help Wanted game, it could have manifested an entirely new virus known as Glitch Trap. But I would say this theory has the least supporting evidence, but like a lot of theories in this video, this brings us right back to the beginning. If Glitch Trap even is the mimic, we need to figure out which program it is since there are now two, and what this means for the rest of the lore. With Security Breach, solving Glitch Trap can tell us what direction Stewa was headed in terms of Vanny and even Burn Trap. This answer would also help us to make connections to the mimic and to other games like Help Wanted 1 and 2. So I think we're on the right path, but even then we lack a clear answer. For the final mystery on this list and video, what is the Scooper? Of course, one of the main questions is if this is the same Scooper from FNAF's sister location. Now design wise they're clearly different and the rooms they are located in also seem to be different, but there have been times where the franchise has changed the designs of characters even though they are meant to be the same, so could this be what's happening here? They seem to serve the exact same purpose, so this conclusion wouldn't be that far stretched. Or another way to look at it is through the Remnant Plex theory by She's Always Nervous, where it's suggested that this is a modernized Scooper by Fazbear's Entertainment used to extract remnant energy from victims that is then used to power the Pizzaplex and its animatronics. Of course, check out the full video because this idea is really cool and unique. In terms of the Scooper ending, we saw the Scooper scoop the mimic out of the lion costume, presumably defeating him. But like I said earlier, the elevator ending is most likely canon, which is why I think the Scooper will have some role in the next FNAF game. Like Mexis, it's clear the Scooper is one of the only ways to stop the mimic, so it might have a much bigger role in the future game where we could learn about its past. In Help Wanted 2, we did see the mimic wearing his lion costume and not just as his normal appearance in Ruin, maybe pointing some importance to the Scooper and its ending. There just has to be a reason the game didn't showcase the normal mimic. But in my opinion, this is a mystery that we can cover rather fast since most of it is just speculation. The Scooper doesn't appear for that long besides the ending, and although it is a mystery to be solved, besides its connections to sister location, we just have ideas about the Scooper. So with all that said, has FNAF Security Breach been solved 4 years later? I would say no, but we are definitely getting closer, and I think with the next FNAF game, we should have all the information to do so. Now I think one of the things that made it so hard to solve Security Breach was the production of the game. Through the Dako and Scott Cawthon interview, we learned that Scott Cawthon only gave parts of the story and ideas to Steelwood Studios, which left them having to work with what they had in creating a story that they believed was right. Scott Cawthon didn't directly say to put things in certain areas of the Pizzaplex or to make certain characters do this or that. Steelwood only had components of characters and a story. So ultimately, they didn't have a solid plot to go off of. Meaning Scott and Steelwood Studios had the same pieces telling different stories, which led to it feeling like we were solving two different stories. Like one that focused on the mimic while the other focused on the Aftons, or one that focused on Gregory while the other focused on Vanessa. This was fixed with later games, which is why it's so much easier to theorize and to solve them, the reason Ruin didn't have any unsolved mysteries. So I think this leaves us still trying to solve parts of Security Breach. If you want to look at things specifically, things we still have unsolved include Gregory, Vanessa, Glamrock Freddy, the Sticky Note Room, Princess Quest, Burn Trap, The Blob, The Athens, Nightmarian, Glitch Trap, The Scooper, and Mexis. This might seem like a lot, but with a lot of these mysteries, I feel like we're so close to solving them and that all we need is a piece or two of the puzzle to finally get an answer. In terms of numbers, if we have 15 mysteries in total and only 5 of them are solved, we've technically solved 33.33% of Security Breach. But this list and what parts of it are solved can 100% be debatable, and this was just my take on it. But all these amazing theorists up on screen have played a huge role in solving this game, and I'm telling you guys, just one more FNAF game like Ruin 2 and we can finally solve Security Breach. Newer games are actively solving Security Breach, like with Secret of the Mimic and Help Wanted 2, giving us so much more information and context. So with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and what do you guys think? How have we solved FNAF Security Breach? Make sure to comment down below any thoughts or theories and what your list of mysteries would look like. Let me know if you enjoyed this retrospective video, as I really do think one can be made on every single Steel FNAF game. So please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching.